the way to get rid of feeling inferior and insecure is to remove your feelings of superiority. And I think that's really interesting because I imagine a lot of people would want to do the former, but quite like the latter.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, I want to not feel inferior. I want to not feel insecure, but also they love seeing someone that's worse than them and stomping them and saying, this isn't just because I was born with a better brain. This is because I'm better than you. Or they see somebody who's bad at math and they're good at math and they go, that guy's an idiot. He may be handsome, but he's dumb. And they love that feeling. And then they feel bad about themselves in other ways. And it's just interesting because I don't know that many people want to follow that prescription of getting rid of the superiority in order to get rid of the insecurity.
So I 100% agree that those are flip sides of the same coin. And the coin is called comparing myself and judging my value relative to my performance in certain areas against other people. My question is, do you believe, or does he believe, maybe you is the better question, that that it is easier to remove the superior feelings and thus the negative ones will follow, and that's like a more actionable place to start? I believe that they're connected, and if you can remove one, you will remove the other. I'm not sure that the feelings of superiority are necessarily, like, do you think that's an easier in from an action standpoint?
I do.
Okay.
I do think so, because I feel like often, well, for some people I do, let's say. I think for some people it's easier to have empathy for other people than for yourself. And so if you see somebody who's worse than you at something, for some people, especially the people that beat themselves up a lot, I think it can be easier to go, oh, well, the reason that person is struggling is because of their childhood or because of their IQ or because of the lack of training. And they can extend sympathy or empathy to other people more easily than to themselves. They, especially perfectionists, let's say, will hold themselves to a standard that they would never hold other people to. So I do think that potentially that practice of, oh, I'm feeling superior, but I shouldn't, let me put myself in that person's shoes and understand why I'm not better than them, even though in this one area I perform at a higher level, I think can be easier than giving empathy to themselves. For the people that are, now I think there's other people who are probably the opposite, who are really good at writing off their own mistakes and, have zero ability to understand other people's plights. But I do think there's a level of high achievers that are just really good at beating themselves up, but pretty good at understanding that other people aren't meant to be held to that standard.
And so you're saying for those high achievers, they, in that case, they don't, do they have that feeling of superiority in the people that you're describing that same way, or they would work on that?
Well, I think that we all have and enjoy that feeling of superiority. I think both instincts are in most humans and have to be purposefully culled. But I think some people would have an easier time purposefully culling the I am better than that person instinct.
I agree with that.
Rather than the I'm worse than that person instinct.
I guess where I was not certain was like, oh, this is the way to go. But for some people, I can imagine a type where that's an easier in, and therefore it's kind of like a seat, like, yeah, they just will rise together. It's like, okay, so if you want to, you maybe one you can lower more easily for you than the other, and it tends to have a reciprocal effect on the other side. So yeah, I agree with that. In terms of action, I mean, that is good and hard. I just am thinking I come back to psychedelics. So if you're out there and you're wondering, oh man, I've struggled with this, I just
well, it reminded me of another thing, which was people who read the comments on their Instagrams or their YouTube channels or whatever,
exactly,
and they feel
that's what I went to immediately.
They feel badly because of the negative comments. I can bet with pretty good odds that you give yourself the ability to feel good off of good comments, but the negative ones hit you harder. So overall, this is a net negative experience for you, but you do tie your ego to both. And the only way to let go of the negative is to let go of the positive. So I was thinking this out. I was like, okay, well, to let go of feeling inferior, let go of being superior. If you want to not get affected by negative comments, don't get affected by positive comments. So what do you at the end of the day let yourself be affected by. I think there's the monk that moves to the mountains.
I was gonna say, congratulations, you've invented Buddhism.
No, so I think there's the monk who moves to the mountain, right? And just says, nothing is good, nothing is bad.
Yes.
I break my leg and I'm not upset. I win the lottery and I'm not happy. I think most people wouldn't sign up for that because it's so extreme, even though we understand that that's what enlightenment is. That's the end of the line for Buddhism. They just go, well, that sounds terrible to never feel happy about anything. So have you in your own life thought about how to balance this? Like where you want to end up?
Well, I do believe like enlightenment in Buddhism is not like, oh, this is a good strategy for me. And so like, I'll choose the middle road because the highs, it is a recognition of unavoidable recognition of the futility of any other way. I think it is a desperate, like, oh my God, this cycle just continues and the highs are the lows and the lows are the highs. And you're just like, and then there's a breakthrough and you go, oh my God. So I don't know that if the people are out there are like thinking I'll go Buddhist or not, it's like, well, don't worry about it. You're not enlightened. So at some point the suffering will tie so closely in a way that you potentially recognize it. So have I thought about it? Yes, I have. And I've modulated down for sure in my life. I have, for instance, in my last relationship, I think modulated the top down, and some of it was like ego driven. Oh my God, I'm afraid of getting hurt. But some of it was a recognition of the highs of my prior relationship to that not being sustainable, and going like, there's something not real about it. So while yes, I am afraid of going there to a degree, I am also incapable of going there because I cannot believe the high in the same way. And so for comments, I've had the same reaction, which is I'm incapable of believing the nice things said about me there in the same way. It's not like an active choice that I make anymore. And I think it started as that. So yeah, what I have come to is in many areas of my life, I've tapered. Is that right, wrong? I don't know. It's not a choice though for me. It has happened based on my experiences and of the untruth of the beautiful things said about me and the untruth of the horrible things said about me and the untruth of my lowest moments and the untruth of my highest moments. Not the untruth, I take that back. The lack of sustainability in them is what, because they're true, they're real. It's not like they don't exist. So yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts?
No. The thing I think is interesting is just how, for a lot of people, how unappealing Buddhist enlightenment can seem.
It's getting more and more appealing to me, constantly.
Yeah. It just involves flattening the feeling good when someone compliments you.
I have had tiny breakthroughs of a difference. I think there's a different quality that would, to the outer person, look good, like the joy that the Dalai Lama experiences. And to the outer person, it's like, oh, that's happiness. That is something. And I have experienced limited degrees of something that I don't think is just a high. It's like a cruising altitude contentment, which is not, it's not zero. It's not flat. It is, and it's not fair to say that it's the 10 either. It's like of a different quality than that. And so I think that while you might think that you're like, oh, I'm just going to go flat, I think that you like go flat and then you break through into a different dimension of contentment potentially.
Yeah, it's just one that comes with no financial success and without the joy of seeing your kid be born or a new lover.
I don't think so. I think it, and I understand what you're saying. Like when you go like full tilt, it precludes action because why prefer literally eating to not eating?
So this is what I'm saying is that there's I'm on a mountaintop in a log cabin alone. And then there's anything that's not that. And if you say I'm going to try to pursue enlightenment, but I'm also going to have a wife and kids, that's an option.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking is what do you think is possible to add to that life? Because I do think if you follow it through all the way, non-attachment kind of precludes a marriage.
Yes, 100%.
Being an enlightened Buddhist monk, it's tough to have a wife and kids.
Yeah, probably wouldn't make you a great dad.
A 9-to-5 job, right? So this is kind of what I'm asking you is what have you considered maybe adding on to that you feel would be sustainable or that you feel would be worth the lows? Like hypothetically, your kid's going to die and it's going to suck, but you get the lifetime of having that joy. You know, that's a non-Buddhist
sure
pursuit potentially. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what you've considered adding to it, or if you've thought about your ideal end state or anything like that.
I've considered more what I thought about subtracting from it, I should say. And there's and for that list is long. Like the things that I would like to be less attached to and have seen breakthroughs in, though not complete, is long. What I guess it's going to be like what remains at the end of it. And so what do I think will remain? Things that I've remained attached to. I've increased my attachment to my family of origin, I would say.
Like I'd say a dog is net positive in my life.
Yeah.
The amount of negative emotion I get from being attached to my dog.
But it's going to be brutal.
When she dies, it's going to be horrible. But I think,
and I'm not, and like, I say that not because I'm like telling you, like I'm thinking of my own.
Yeah, it'll be horrible. But I think when I look at the net of it, I'll go worth.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a Buddhist counter to that. I'm not saying everyone should do it, but I'm just curious if you have other aspects. It's like for me, the daily enjoyment of the dog and being attached to the dog, and eventually feeling massive loss at the death of the dog. I go, this math seems like good math.
I also think that Buddhist attachment isn't just on the level of things, it's on the level of emotional experiences, which is really where. And it's like the attachment that you have to let go of is the attachment to being happy all the time, which means you get the dog, you know, because you're okay with the crushing sadness at the end of it. And so I do think that there is a paradoxical enlightenment that is some level of enlightenment with preference and action, but the difference of experience that you have is not one of horrible avoidance. Like you and I are both planners, optimizers, and avoiders. We like think about our future, think of potential negative things that could happen, and take tons of steps fearfully to avoid the bad things.
Sure, drinking green tea every day to prevent cancer.
Green tea, and oh my God, I don't want, can't make this commitment, can't do this thing. And it's not, I think, total flippancy. I don't know where that middle path is that has been described, but I also think that there's a Buddhist, hey, I want a kid, I want a dog, I want this, I prefer these things, and I love them, and I'm also not, I'm not attached to non-attachment.
Sure,
as like a strategy of avoiding pain.
I'm not poo-pooing Buddhism. I'm just thinking of it in its extreme, or I don't know if the Dalai Lama has a dog, for instance. I think of that level of pursuing it, and I go, okay, well, stepping down to be the family man Buddhist, that's much more appealing to me personally. You know what I mean? To like having the dog,
sure,
and getting a big yard instead of just being like, it doesn't matter, there is no good. Like, yeah, but I'll take my space and I'll take my good weather, you know, instead of just going to...
Yeah, prefer to live in California because the weather's nice.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a preference. That's an attachment to good weather.
Yeah. And when it's, when I have to go somewhere for crappy weather because of a wedding or business or something and it's not nice, it's a bummer. Yeah. I think that's where I am. And where I am is I'm trying to reduce the attachments. The biggest ones that I'm trying to reduce are, and I've done a good job, is like mass validation, perpetual growth, whether that's personal development, business, or otherwise. And I've done a good job in those two areas. And then...
You think so? You don't think you just shifted your growth?
Where?
D&D optimization?
Well, what I have, and you could call it that, what I have not been able to release is my hyperactive brain. Like my brain is like your dog. If it doesn't get something to chew on, it will ruin the day. Like it needs... that.
Yep.
So sure, you could call it growth, but I suppose what I used to perceive as growth was like, this is going to make my future better. And like my growth in D&D, I'm not really under the belief that when Regis hits level 16, that my life will be meaningfully transformed. It's just a chewy problem for me to really like sink into. So yeah, like I guess that's perhaps the attachment that I've let go of is like, making my future version of Charlie an ideal. Honestly, that's perhaps a better way to say that I've let go of that. Because what I used to think is I'm going to speak 3 and 4 languages. I'm going to be really good at dancing. I'm going to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I'm going to like have all of these awesome things, and I just don't care so much about that anymore. But yeah, I think I'm probably similar to you, which is not going to let go of all attachments.
I was just curious. I thought it was interesting advice, and I liked the advice. And then taken to infinity, I went, well, this is intimidating advice now.
Yeah.
Basically to saying to let go of negative is like you let go of all the positive. And I went, well, this is daunting. I wonder where I'll end up landing.
Yeah. I mean, we're having now a conversation that I think has been had trillions of times before, but
Sure.
It's worth it. It's like, there is a degree to which, and I've had these experiences, like, I forget where I was in a massage or whatever. And I was like, oh, this feels good. And I was like, I can't hang on to anything. I can't hang on to this moment. I can't hang on to, like, you can't, I mean, I can mention, I'll talk more. I broke up with my girlfriend last night, and I'm very sad about it. And this conversation has been fun to distract me. But there was a moment where I was like, I want to soak this moment up. Like, I want to remember this. And I'm going to become more present. I'm going to become more aware. And I was like, you know what? That's great and all. And that's great for the present moment, but I can't take it with me. You know, like we were having our conversation. I've discussed it before about an amenable breakup because we want different things. Just soak it in, soak it in. It's like, it's sand through an hourglass, man. It's constantly coming and constantly going. So there is, perhaps I'm more Buddhist today in that you can try and attach and hang on and things can sustain for longer, but when they're done, man, the sand is gone.
Sure.
And the belief that you could squeeze it harder to make it last meaningfully is a bit false, while at the same time admitting some things can last for 1 year and some things can last literally till you die.
Yeah.
So
when all the sand goes to the other side of the hourglass, you just flip the hourglass.
You're already dead.
Sand never leaves the hourglass.
Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.